Hi, I'm Deacon Anthony Cioe. If you're anything like me, and I guess if you're anything like most people, if someone asked you something about yourself, like, you know, tell me about your children, okay? Tell me about how you met your spouse. If someone asks you a question like that, you are able to start talking and start sharing information. It comes naturally, right? We love to speak about ourselves, and we love to speak about something that we know a lot about, right? We're an experts about our own life. And I think that's really interesting. Well, we find ourselves sometimes in situations where we need to share something with other people other than our own personal family or children. We need to share with someone our faith. We need to help them to understand how they could feel so much better, how they can have the joy of Christ in their life. And we can do that by sharing our own faith story. But it's not as easy to do that, is it? It's not as easy to share our faith story just about talking about our children or our family. So what we're going to do today in this particular episode of Encountering Crisis, we're going to talk about how to write and share your faith story. Now, we may not understand it or realize it, but our life is a series of dots, okay? There's a series of things that happen in our lives. We may think nothing of them during the time that they happen, but at some point, we start to see all of those dots emerge into a picture. I call it connecting the dots. So if you remember when you were a child, you had the piece of paper and had all little dots on it, and they were numbered, and you would start, and it looked like nothing, it just looked like a sea of dots. Then you would start to connect those dots with your pencil. And all of a sudden, a picture would start to emerge. Well, that's what it is in our lives. And that's what it is in our faith journey. There are people who come in and out of our lives. There are people who have an effect on us. At the time they come into our lives, we may not realize what that effect is. But when we think back on it, we're able to understand that they had an effect on us and they helped to form us and shape us in some way. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good. But it's great to be able to discern those people who've come through our life. So when we talk about sharing our faith story, we can't do that until we sit back and we reflect and we look at all the things that have happened. We try to connect those dots in our lives. So this episode I'm calling Connecting the Dots. Connecting the dots of our faith story. Now, I know that there are times when we see a person who's in need. We see a person who's either sad or hurting, or we see a person who just needs to really be able to understand that there's more to life than what they know at this point. There's something better, and that's a great way to be able to share with them your faith story, because you can help them then in doing that. But again, you can't do that unless you're prepared to do it. So let's kind of walk through the process. I'm going to begin by telling you about my faith journey. And I've got to be honest with you, like most people, it's nothing dramatic. There were no bolts of lightning. There were no, aha moments that were so great that it became like, wow, here's my faith journey. It's not. For most of us, it's very, very quiet. And that's what it was in my life. I was raised in a great household. My mom was such a great Catholic. I mean, she went to Mass every single day, and she really instilled in us good, strong Catholic faith. I went to Catholic school, Catholic grade school, Catholic high school. I was an altar server. I can remember many, many great moments in my life that were shared around the faith. My mom had a great devotion to First Fridays. So First Fridays, we went to Mass, but we also went to breakfast afterwards in the summertime. And that was just a wonderful remembrance for me, that I can remember and I can associate First Fridays with us going out to breakfast as a family with myself and my two brothers. My dad's faith was not very strong, but he was a good man, and he basically supported and made sure that we had good Catholic values. Like most young people, came the end of high school, I drifted away from church. I really did. I didn't really see the need to go to Mass and see the need to go to church. So I think that my parents created these great seeds. And my Catholic education created these great seeds of faith within my life. But at that particular time in my life, they really weren't nurtured. They weren't growing. In my mid-20s, I met my wife, who happens to be my camera person today. So Phil, hi, as you're behind the camera. I met my wife, and her faith was very, very strong. So we started to go to church and that type of thing. We had children, and it became important for us to go to church, and went to religious education, took our kids to religious education. But honestly, I was just going through the motions. It really didn't impact me at that time. In, I guess it was 1994, my mom and my dad both got sick at the very same time. Both became exceptionally ill. Both were in the hospital at the same time. And I remember going to the hospital every day. And I remember sitting around people as I was waiting to go into the room who, family members, some who were so joy-filled and some were so sad. And I remember there would have been other patients in my dad's room or in my mom's room. And I remembered some were just so filled with joy and some were so sad. And I remember asking one person, how can you be so happy and so positive in spite of the difficulty that you're going through? And without even thinking, okay, she picked up a holy card and held it up and said, this is why. And on that holy card it said, Lord, help me to remember that nothing can happen to me today that you and I together can't handle. Isn't that a beautiful sentiment? And I remember that so well. That was a small aha moment in my life. It really was. It was a small aha moment where I said, okay, Christ being in the center of your life really makes a difference. Around the same time, my brother-in-law Joe was a great person, and he went to Malvern, and every year he went to Malvern for a retreat. And he used to ask me to go every year, go on retreat, go on retreat. And I just didn't want to do it. And I guess with my parents, they passed away shortly after their illnesses. I guess I felt the need really to go on retreat. And I went on retreat at Malvern, and it was another point. It was another great God in my life that I connected to. I found a great sort of spirituality in that particular retreat. It really got me wanting to learn more. So I started to read, and I started to ask questions about my faith. I started to reflect, spiritual reflection. I really started to learn more about my faith, knowing that by doing that, I was enriching myself. I was beginning to feel great, amazing peace in my life. So I think that was just exceptionally important part of it. I also decided to become, or at least go through a deacon formation program. That was very, very important to me. So I entered the deacon formation program, started to discern what it was to be a deacon, whether that was for me in my life. And again, learning, growing spiritually, that has been fantastic. And being a deacon, we are devoted to a life of service. That's what we are. As deacons, we are servants. It is our goal to be able to help people in any way possible. Okay? It's not about me. It's about how I can be a servant to others. And still at that time, of discerning what was God specifically calling me to do within my diaconate. I mean, how was I going to serve the people? And I remember a very specific incident. My wife says to me that I'm very conscious of my surroundings. I have a tendency to hear and see everything that's going on. Sometimes I may not be hearing and seeing what she's saying as much, but I have a tendency to hear and see everything going around me. We went out to breakfast one day. We were at a local diner, and here's what emerged in that particular situation. We were sitting there, and we were in a booth, and where we were sitting, we were able to see the parking lot. We were able to see basically everyone in the diner. So we're sitting at this table, and I see in the parking lot a man get out of a car, and he has two daughters. I'm going to say he was in his mid-30s, and the daughters were maybe 7 years old, 10 years old, around that. They were dressed up. By the way, I forgot to mention, this was about 2 weeks before Christmas. So that's the scene that we're in. It's 2 weeks before Christmas. We're in this diner. The man and what appeared to be his two daughters, they get out of the car, they come into the diner, and they sit to my left. And apparently, mom and dad had been divorced. This was his Christmas visit with his two daughters, and that was sad. And the daughters gave him their Christmas presents to him in the diner that morning. And I remember one of the daughters saying to him, "But Dad, can't you be with us on Christmas this year?" There was such sadness in the three of their faces that day. Broken families. There's a lot of them in our community. There was another table. It was a large booth. And in that large booth, there were people coming and going. You can see that what was happening is the mom and dad, who were probably in their 60s, mid to late 60s, the family was coming in for Christmas. They were arriving and they were meeting for breakfast. And there were children and grandchildren. There was just a mass of great activity at this table. There was such happiness. Hello, Merry Christmas, hugging, kissing. And as the breakfast progressed, some were leaving, okay? You could tell that they were still going to be together for Christmas. But I looked at the mom and the dad, and I saw the mom turn to her husband, and I heard her say, "I wish it could always be like this. I wish our children can be with us all the time." In our lives, there are difficulties that we experience. We have children who leave us, who go far away, and we miss them. And we deal with that sadness. There's another table. It was kind of a little bit off to my right, and there was a dad, and he had two sons, and the sons were in their late teens, and there were some disabilities, there were some mental challenges there, but it was the most beautiful thing you can see, because in spite of their disabilities, in spite of their mental challenges, they were having fun. Okay, this was a dad who was just being a great dad, who there was such love between him and his children. They were loud, they were together, there was such love there. It's a beautiful story in that table of how families are able to be so happy and joyful, even in the midst of the disabilities they might have within their families. And finally, off to my right, the one that just touches me so much every time I think of it, there was, looked like a husband and a wife. And she was wearing a bandana on her head, a scarf. And you can see that underneath of it, her hair was gone. You could see that she had either been through chemotherapy or still undergoing chemotherapy. It was affecting her. She looked frail, okay? She looked ill. And I saw her and her husband leaning across the table, holding hands with each other, okay? And whispering. And I was able to hear in the conversation that they were speaking about what was to come ahead, what their lives were going to be like, okay? When one of them passed. There was sadness, but there was such love. In that scene in the diner, I saw a microcosm of our community. There are so many needs. There are people who are hurting. There are people who are having difficulties. There are people who are handling their difficulties well. There are others who are sad and ill. Besides what I saw there, we know that our community, there's drugs, there's violence, there's happiness, and there's sadness. But the point is, there are so many people who are in need. And are we ready to be able to reach out to them in that time of need so that we can help them? One of the ways that we can help is by being easily able to share our faith story with other people. That we're easily able to say, let me tell you what I've experienced in my life and how God has helped me to deal with those things. You can't do that unless you have taken the time to sit and discern those particular points, those dots in your life, and where they've brought you to in your particular faith. So I guess what I'd like you to do is think about taking the time to sit down and write your own faith story. Go through a couple of questions. And there's a couple of questions I have that I'll share with you, because they're questions that can just help you to discern what it is in your faith story that you can share with others. And I'd like to present just 4 key questions. Take the time to reflect on these questions. First, what was your life like before you encountered Jesus? How was it? Before you knew God in your life, what was your life like? Second question, who were the key people or groups who influenced you to follow Christ? Think about those people who came into your life, okay? Who may have come in and have gone out of your life, but shared something with you that was helpful. Or think of those people who are still a strong influence in your life on a regular basis. Third, how did you meet Jesus? What were the circumstances in your life where you first started to experience Jesus and what Jesus meant to you? And finally, what difference has following Jesus made? Right? How are you a different person today because of your following Jesus in your life? So, I guess in conclusion, what I'd like to just be able to share with you is that each of us has a story, right? Each of us has a story. We may not be able to articulate it, but it's important to try to articulate it, right? And our story is important to other people because our experiences can help lead them in a direction that will help find our Lord. So what I'd like you to do is take the time to actually reflect upon those 4 questions and write your own faith story and be prepared at a moment's notice to share it with other people. I thank you for taking the time to be with me. I hope that you find this of value. I hope it gives you the ability to, at some point, lead others to Christ by sharing your faith story with them. Thank you very much. God bless you.